Welcome to this webinar. My name is Julie. I work with Klimakultur. It's a Norwegian nonprofit placed in the mountains of Norway. And thank you for joining us for this conversation with three very exciting people who I'm excited to get to know more about. And I'll just invite them in and we'll start the webinar here. You can ask questions or put comments in the comment sections, and we will make sure to include them during the webinar. The webinar is recorded, and hopefully we will be able to publish it afterwards. So I'm just inviting in our three guests today.
Hi.
Hi,
everyone.
Hi, Julie.
Hi,
Thank you so much for having us.
I'm happy to invite Gunjan Nandan, Kirsten Wessel, and Samuel Rubin, who are the co-founders of the Entertainment and Culture Pavilion, who did a lot of events on COP28 in Dubai. And we're going to dive deep into that, but I would like to start off with each of you just introducing yourself. And should we start with you, Gunjan?
Yes, love to. Firstly, Julie, thank you so much for having us, and I speak for all of us here that we're really excited for all the kind of conversations that are going to unfold here. My name's Gunjan Nandan, for all of you who are witnessing and hearing us today, and I am living in Dubai right now, but I'm originally from India, in a small town up in northern India called Dehradun, which is surrounded by lush greenery, mountain ranges. So it's something that I really truly miss, and also something that I think I have gained from my culture and my just parents in general, and especially something around sustainability and conscious level thinking is exactly why I'm here today speaking to all of you, and also sharing the kind of work that I've done here. I'm also the co-founder of Dubai Climate Collective, which is a regional platform based in Dubai, in the UAE. And the platform itself is a cultural lever and a change maker for cultural practitioners in the region, and also something that talks about ethical practices, sustainability, and awareness and climate justice. So a lot of the issues that we know we are surrounded with, but also something that our community really needs to talk about and really needs to share. Of course, I am also the co-founder of the Entertainment and Culture Pavilion alongside Kirsten and Samuel here. And that's a lot of the conversations we're going to have is surrounding the work that we've done in Dubai and even beyond Dubai right now. And yeah, I will pass it on to
But you
Kirsten.
didn't mention, sorry, I want to do a sponsored break. But you didn't mention the card game that you created, Charity Change Maker.
This is in the making for everyone who's witnessing right now, a card game that we have actually worked on through the help of Dubai Climate Collective, a very fun community starter and sparking insightful conversations, who love to be in the space and are even, let's say, newbies and beginners, but also climate activists and enthusiasts who have a knowledge of the industry. And this is something that I think, as Sam mentioned, I forget to mention, it's because I think this is just in my blood and my brain that I sometimes eventually skip over, but also because I think this is a daily part of my, my life, that I'm talking about climate just in general so much that all of the things that I work with, I completely skip over. But thank you so much for mentioning that. And it will be hopefully, with communities in stores soon, once I get a hang of actually launching it. But thank you. And yeah, I will pass it on over to Sam, since you were the one to mention the game.
No, I don't know if you wanted to go, Kirsten, but happy to go next.
Go for it.
I'm joining today from Barcelona, and pardon me if I look a little bit like I'm zombie-like. That might be the jet lag, as I came today from Los Angeles, and I have been based in LA for the last 10 years, and now a little bit go back and forth between the Mediterranean and North America, which are very much my two identities and a big part of who I am, as Gunjan was talking about culture and how it defines us. I am a social impact practitioner. I work in impact campaigns, and I am a a producer, a content producer for film and TV, and also a climate storyteller and a grassroots activist. And I have been exploring the intersection between activism, content creation, and cultural expression for more than 15 years. I started as a child actor, and then got into producing, and always did it thinking about how could I use my interdisciplinary skills, my passion, and my storytelling to compel people to take action or catalyze positive change. And I think that as I grew up, and now I'm 28 years old, it became very evident that climate is the mother of all issues. You know, as the game Cherry Change Makers put us in a lot of the cards, there is a lot of things that affect our daily life that are connected to climate, and it's also pretty obvious that that affects every sector, every industry, including the cultural sector, no, which is something that we are here today to talk at length. And so a preview of the initiative that I've co-founded before the Entertainment Culture Pavilion, which I think led to the moment that we are now, have definitely been the Hollywood Climate Summit, which is having now the 5th edition this year. I'm no longer involved, but it's beautiful to see how the format is growing, and there is so many people that need to have access to these spaces and communities. And then also with Gunjan, I've been in the convening team of ECA, which is the Entertainment and Culture for Climate Action initiative of the UNCCC. We're going to talk about as well UNCCC, how did they engage with culture, and more at length about ECA. But basically, it is a sectoral framework to not just decarbonize the creative industry, but also create more content and storytelling that inspires and raises awareness of the reality, the climate reality that we live in. And with that, I'll pass it to Kirsten, who also does a lot of magnificent things.
Thank you. I always joke with Sam that he should do all of our intros from now on because he's our #1 cheerleader for everyone on the team. But I am Kirsten Wessel. I'm an American, but I have some Norwegian roots through my father. So very excited for this conversation with Julie and to engage more in the Scandinavian sector, especially when it comes to the intersection of culture and climate. So I am 30 years old. I'm American, but I'm also German and Norwegian, very complicated. And I've lived most of my adult life in Europe and plan to go back very soon, also hopefully to Norway. So if you're in the southern region near Kristiansand or Sogna, please feel free to send me an email. But overall, I'm one of the co-founders of ENC Pavilion alongside Gunjan, Sam, and someone who's not here, Pooja Tilvawala, who's also incredible with her organization, Youth Climate Collaborative. Overall, if you see my CV, it's quite interdisciplinary, kind of all over the place. I actually started my career in aerospace, and eventually in my 4 years working at Airbus kind of moved more and more into the impact and sustainability space, and then ultimately ended up in a project using satellite intelligence to monitor deforestation, specifically in Malaysia, Indonesia, and then South and Central America. So really I had my first taste, and that led me to about 4 years ago, quit everything I was doing with my cushy corporate job, and then pursue a master's degree in sustainability, and then also start just engaging more in the nonprofit space, and then eventually through many, many happy coincidences, meeting Sam, Gunjan, and Pooja, and then starting ENC. So at the same time, I also am a co-founder of Saunter Media. It's primarily a production company. I'm a producer of films, impact content, and events. But with Saunter specifically, we operate mostly in the US, Peru, and Spain. And we work on a lot of just using the power of storytelling, communications, and community for social and environmental justice. One of our we have 3 film projects going on, one that will hopefully get to streaming services very soon, which is very exciting. And then we also work on particular campaigns. And the one that I'm very interested in is called Audiovisual Sovereignty. And it's basically the right right, we have a definition that I can share in the link, but basically the right of all communities, all people to basically represent their own story, not just in, the lines that are taken, but also in the production process of content, because very often you'll see journalists come in and tell a particular story and then not really like incorporate the voice of the community, the voice of the individual. So it's really about challenging that, incorporating them into the production process, and therefore having a more genuine and real story at the end of it that inspires more people. So I'll pass it back to you, Julie. I don't know if you also want to introduce yourself or a little bit why we're all here today.
Thank you, Kirsten, and thank you all for your introductions. I'm very happy to be here and get to share your knowledge and experience. We are here today because we want to focus on a subject someone has called culture-based climate action, which is a topic I read more and more about and learn more and more about. And Klimakultur would like to do more webinars and connect ourselves and the culture sector in Norway or in Sweden, Denmark, the Nordic, and connect them with all the global things that are going on in the cultural sector. And one of the most exciting things that's happening is that culture and arts has become more prominent on the international climate conventions. And many organizations and many people have worked hard on this the last few years. And the Entertainment and Culture Pavilion, which you started, kind of gathered all those voices and all those efforts in a room, in a space, in the climate convention before Christmas in Dubai. So I was following a lot of organizations and people on Instagram and social media who were in Dubai, and there was so much exciting stuff happening at your pavilion. So feel free to tell me, what is the Entertainment and Culture Pavilion? How did you do it? Why? And why is it important that culture is implemented in those kind of spaces? So that was a big question.
Very big question. Maybe I'll kick it off and then pass it on to, excuse me, Gunjan and Sam. So overall, how we did it is by, stupidity and a lot of blood and sweat and tears and lots of love at the end of the day. So overall, we, like I said before, we're all kind of like in the climate culture space. And it's a very small world when you're in this world. So we all kind of know each other and we know each other's initiatives. So Sam and I had worked with each other. I think Pooja and Sam had already worked with each other, Sam and Gunjan. So lots of happy coincidences, like I said, and we all kind of came together, a group of people who were already considering something for COP28 and creating a space for everyone to come together, all these different actors that are normally not convened like that because, competition or geography or whatever it is. So we were all kind of planning of, how can we create a space to bring everyone together. And then when those group of people, the four of us, finally met, we're like, okay, let's do this together. We had about, 6 months to kind of pull everything together. Really amazing team of volunteers, incredible team members, all cultural practitioners from all different parts of the world. And we basically just wanted to, it was the first run. We wanted to pull off this event. We wanted to pull off the first ever cultural space for culture and entertainment for climate action in the blue zone of, one of the top conferences in the world, the UN Climate Conference. And we did. It was messy. It was beautiful. And we're excited for where we come from here. So primarily, it was an event space, a meeting space, because I think not a lot of people understand, and this is kind of part of our mission, that, if we're talking about culture-based climate action, it's not only just about decarbonizing the creative industries, but it's also about using the power of culture and entertainment and mainstream media to really catalyze behavioral change, catalyze climate action. So this is just the beginning. We had an amazing kickoff with COP28, and Sam and Gunjan will talk more about that later. But now that we've done that and we have 4 pavilions planned for this year, the next one coming up in Bangkok in, I believe, 2 weeks. So now we have the pavilion scheme going. We know how to do it. We're very confident, but now we're also thinking of how can we expand beyond this and just have the pavilion as one of our programs under the hub of our nonprofit, which is called the Entertainment and Culture Foundation in the US. and really start to think about how to better engage our audiences and our partners, not just through pavilions, but also through thought leadership and through toolkit creation and laboratories and workshops. So I don't know if Gunjan or Sam, you want to jump in on that.
Well, I think that, it's important to emphasize that COP28 saw this groundbreaking, presence of culture-related events, and the Entertainment and Culture Pavilion in the Blue Zone was a big factor for why that explosion of cultural presence took place. It took 28 COPs to have a dedicated space in the creative industries for the cultural sector. A lot of people don't know that when you go into the Blue Zone, there is a pavilion for the petroleum exporting countries. Like OPEC has an actual pavilion inside of COP, and it's been there for, I believe, 10 COPs at least so far now. So, that was one of the shocking things that I remember seeing at COP last year. No, not last year, COP28, but COP27, which was my first time attending a COP conference in Sharm el Sheikh. And it was so shocking to see that those stakeholders had granted themselves a presence in the conference, and still yet I was attending as a cultural practitioner and felt so out of place and misrepresented. The place where I felt the most represented in COP27 was without doubt the Children and Youth Pavilion. And that's where I saw Kirsten and where I saw Pooja. And I remember having a conversation there with Pooja, sitting at the Children and Youth Pavilion, where we were like, we need to have a pavilion for culture next year in Dubai, because this is nuts that there is not a place where storytellers and artists can, showcase what they're doing, and we have to be scattered all over the place. And we did, and I think what we accomplished is remarkable and incredible for many reasons. But I think, one of them is that by design, a lot of these cultural sectors show up to these spaces in a fragmented manner, and we were very intentional about why we call this pavilion entertainment and culture. And part of the reason why is because there is an emphasis of cultural heritage and a lot of uh, sectors of culture that have traditionally been more represented at COP, like, for example, archaeology or cultural patrimony, etc. No, and how can this heritage site be more targeted in terms of adaptation and mitigation because of climate change? But still, yet the picture is quite stark, and that's why we call the impact report "Mind the Culture Gap." No, because last year, despite having the Entertainment and Culture Pavilion and all the momentum that we're going to talk more about in detail today, we still did not accomplish to get culture in the text of the global stocktake. No, the global stocktake, which I'm going to drop the actual text on the comments in case you are not familiar with it. The global stocktake is the text that summarizes and puts on the record where we are since we adopted the Paris Agreement, and that does not include a single mention to culture, only in the context of cultural heritage being safe from physical damage of climate change. But then technology is mentioned. I actually thought it was 17 times, and I double look at it again, and it's 32 times, 32 times that the word technology is in the global stocktake, with innovation, with finance, and all the capitalistic terms that we can come up with. But then when it comes to culture, despite the IPCC clearly emphasizing that cultural leaders, thought leaders, movement artists, they can, leverage behavioral change only if even 10 to 30% of them engage on a specific messaging. And still, yet, despite the IPCC making that important statement in its sixth assessment, we still don't see culture at the global stocktake or in the operational framework of the UNCCC. So I don't know, Gunjan, you've been also very involved with me on ECA, and that part of the reason why we felt the pavilion, we had a great chance because you were already in Dubai, and we wanted to make sure that we were including as well all the local regional stakeholders, because I think also there is a whole other nuance here, no? Is that a lot of times we have this conversation only among white people, no? And people in the global north. And unfortunately, or even better, fortunately, that's not the full picture, no? There is so many more cultures and global majorities that have a say, no? So I think that's also something that has been very important to us.
I think very, very rightly said. And also, I was pretty biased towards, like COP28 happening in Dubai. Also, like, I mean, for several reasons, I was already there. So it was easy for me to actually not have to fly to a different place, but just, be very close to, the COP proceedings and everything that was happening around it. But also, just generally, Dubai holds a major expat community, and not just people who are from India or Pakistan, but just generally from all nationalities. And I feel like it was very essential to have this kind of an undertaking happening in Dubai, and a climate conference this huge, and this huge of a slate. It just made much more of a difference. Like, I could see the effects even after COP, with local organizations, with climate activists, with cultural leaders and practitioners, and the way that their narrative changed, and the way their conversations and their the way of method of storytelling, I would say, changed. It was very refreshing, to say the least. But also, everybody just had so many questions right after COP. Like, why is this not happening? What can we do to, make sure that this is happening? And then, of course, a lot of questions were put up to corporations and companies, and just generally the whole ecosystem in Dubai and the whole of UAE even. So I think that kind of bias really put all of us in a better position also to, have the first ever Entertainment and Culture Pavilion. And I think the kind of impact that also stemmed from it even was, well, multifold. And we'll just give you like a rundown of what exactly happened also over the 12 days of COP. So I believe we had over 126 events from the 12 days. Mind you, we were given a 50 square meter space in the blue zone, which is like a tiny space.
Well, we were given, no, that's all we can afford. We would have had a much bigger one, but having a pavilion at COP is actually pretty expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah. Sorry.
So I think the way that we really conducted, and we sort of streamlined ourselves even till the last day, till the last minute, was something like a sight to witness. Like, I just remember all of us, just looking for things, last minute things to, complete and do, and, seeking outside help, seeking volunteers, seeking people who can support us, and partners, even community coalition partners who could actually support us with making this possible. And it just goes to say that community does so much for you. If you have a really strong coalition who can actually support you till the very end, miraculous things can happen. But just when I speak of community, we had like 300 speakers from 64 countries. We had a 70%, over 70%, BIPOC speakers. We had over 175 partners from 66 countries. We exhibited, I believe, 40 plus. Yes.
Could you please explain BIPOC?
Yeah, I
Yes.
was thinking, I don't think outside the US.
So BIPOC is, so BIPOC is Black, Indigenous people of color. So we basically are saying we are including multiple nationalities, races, ethnicities. And of course, it's very, I would say, it's very little to say that it's just one word that contains many different kinds of ethnicities. But yes, BIPOC is by all means multitude of different nationalities and ethnicities.
And for us, it was also, if I can jump in here, it was also important to not just look at race and ethnicity, but also at the lens of global majority, because I do think that even though that, for example, 70% of our speakers were from the global south and BIPOC, we also realized that the most represented country by all indicators was the US and the UK, and the countries that can afford having a bigger presence there, which are also the ones that have the bigger responsibility when it comes to climate, and they are also the ones that spend the more money in culture and create the more content that then people see as the idea of globalization that we have. So it's a little bit of a slippery slope. But sorry, I don't want to.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
Julie, you want to add something?
I'd just like to rewind a little bit to something Kirsten said. Maybe Gunjan or one of yours could explain. But very often, and I experienced that working with this, I for many years only worked on decarbonization of the culture sector. How do we do waste management, and how do we take the train instead of flying, and all those things which we should, and we should continue doing. But the leap from doing that to working with culture and climate on the scale you are doing, I find it difficult sometimes to grasp or to explain people that this is two different things. Have you experienced working on explaining that kind of difference, and why is it?
Well, I will add very briefly that when we started consulting with the Entertainment and Culture for Climate Action with the UNCCC, I remember the first meeting I had with the UNCCC, and I very quickly realized that their expertise is not entertainment and culture, and part of the reason why they needed a convening team with members from the industry was to support them, because I'm not an expert on UN related things. I don't expect them to be an expert on entertainment related things. And one of the big gaps that made me feel that way is that I remember having this conversation similar to what you brought up about the decarbonization, and then when we mentioned the term climate storytelling, not only they never thought of it, but also their first literal quote was, well, that might sound like propaganda. Like that might sound like as if like we are trying to tell people, and we cannot tell, creators what do they need to tell stories about. When I was like, well, no one is going to tell a story because the UN told them to tell a story, that's for sure. But the fact that the UN doesn't necessarily have a systematic approach to how to work with culture practitioners and storytellers and people who are adept with more than words and using story-driven facts to compel people, that's just such a missed opportunity, And so with DECA, we have an assembly of different stakeholders, and we polled people on the priority and storytelling and decarbonization polled with one percentage of difference. So I don't think it's an either-or conversation. It's not mutually exclusive at all. It's about how do we push for a more systematic approach within the industry, and that systematic approach includes both the production phase and also the content itself. And I know that Norway has some interesting potential climate storytelling catalogs as well, because I was just talking with Kirsten too about some TV shows in Norway that are starting to do that and exploring that. So I think that we're all starting to see that more in our TV sets and film, because up until now, we haven't. I mean, the Good Energy, which is one of our partners, and they put together a playbook for screenwriters to write climate into their stories. They did a report, and they found that only 2.8% of all the TV and film scripts released between 2016 and 2020 had any keywords or mentions related to climate on it, versus birthday cake or dog, which polled above 10%. So I think we have a long way to go, and I'm sure that many countries, including Norway, can lead the way in this process.
Thank you, Samuel, and thank you all three for very good reflections. A question that comes to mind, and it's because we're placed in Norway, and Norway is, of course, one of those countries in the world with the most expansive oil policy and with a very huge state-owned oil industry. What role does fossil fuels play in your mind when you're working with culture and the work you are doing? Is fossil fuel something you reflect on, you implement on? How is your position on how we should handle it?
I think the three of us will maybe have different answers for this, but at least on my side, so of course, traveling for, film production, for filming trips, that's also, of course, very carbon intensive, and you need to watch out for that. And then if you're talking about, real Hollywood sets, which Sam can definitely speak to with his work on Hollywood Climate Summit, that's, of course, extremely carbon intensive. And we have a lot of partners who are trying to change that, like Emily O'Brien, and I'm forgetting the name of her organization, but we'll drop it.
Earth Angel.
Earth Angel, thank you. Who and even one of our fiscal sponsors, Creative Migration, who has a cultural center in Bangkok where we're going to actually have our Bangkok Pavilion this month. And they do basically climate impact reporting for all of their different events. And then for Emily O'Brien, she really tracks all of the different waste and fossil fuel consumption and so on and so forth on big Hollywood sets. So that's one side of it. And then on my side, because I'm my co-founder and I kind of jokingly have like a kind of a guerrilla filmmaking kind of technique and way of working, and very much on the ground, community level. And if you're thinking of small community productions, I'll also drop a link to our last event, which is called the Moyuna Floating Jungle Film Festival. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's in the city of Iquitos in Peru, very impoverished. It's flooded half of the year. So our team built a floating stage, and it was really amazing. People came up in their boats, and it was the first time many of them actually saw a film on the big screen. Oh, thank you, Sam. That's a news article, and I'll send the Instagram as well. So yeah, if you're looking at those types of productions, and even when him and we do community cinema workshops where we spend a week in communities and we basically teach them communication skills. If we have the time, we even teach them like real cinematography and filming and film production. And then it culminates with, actually filming something and editing it and screening it on the 6th day of the workshop. And that process, if you're looking at Moyuna, if you're looking at small community screenings, it is almost always a diesel generator that is, powering everything. So I think it's also maybe a matter of looking at wealth and distributions all throughout the world and how that relates to the cultural sector and barriers to entry and so on and so forth. So at least for me, it's almost seen, in my experience, it's somehow a necessary evil sometimes. And of course, we all touch it and we can't avoid it. And it's just something that we have to consciously work on. And I think that's one of the reasons why the pavilion and being this gathering space and sharing best practices, I think that's so special, because I had no idea that there are other people who are doing similar things, who also have good ideas of how to reduce carbon footprint, even track it and be more responsible. So at least that's my view. And I think and Gunjan have a very different, more nuanced view.
Well, I just want to add to what the example that you said about Moyuna and global equity, that, will that area have access to a clean energy alternative? Will they be able to have anywhere close to their area a solar power generator or an electric power generator? Probably not, So I think that we still have a lot of barriers to tackle before we get there. But what I want to mention about your question, Juliet, I think it's important to keep in mind when it comes to oil, is that the fossil fuel industry has been intertwined with the cultural sector for so long and in so many regards and so many ways. One of our organizing partners, the Climate Propagandist, who is also one of the co-founders of Dubai Climate Collective, does a lot of great research and content about how the fossil fuel industry has been using marketing and misinformation and greenwashing, which is, guess what, storytelling and good use of creative skill to deceive people into thinking that we don't have a choice, that, like Kirsten said, oil is this necessary evil that we now have to live with because we've got rid of the alternative, or at least not even given it an actual fair shot. And I think that's what we have to understand, is what a supremacist industry had the fossil fuel industry set up, that they pretty much bowed to competition and put themselves at the very top thanks to outrageous taxpayer-funded subsidies that are in the trillions and trillions of dollars when you compare that to the billions, and not that many billions, that we spent in clean energy, and that we still have to reverse a lot of the trend. And I want to hear what you think about this, Gunjan, but I also want to quickly point that when you go to any museum, when you go to any big opera house, when you go to any big cultural institution, you most likely will see names of donors and philanthropists that have connection to the oil industry, such as also the drug pharmaceutical industry, and probably many other questionable, reputationable industries, because they know that supporting culture is cool and fun, and it's a cool way to whitewash your intentions. And that's also why the work we do as cultural leaders matters even more, because we get to endorse and normalize people and institutions based on who we collaborate with. And it's also why we decided not to partner or accept any funding from any fossil fuel companies or companies that might receive funding from fossil fuel.
I think both of you, Kirsten and Sam, you put forth the major points. Something that needs to be talked about and needs to be showcased in front of everyone, which is amazing, because I don't think these kinds of conversations, they're never enough, and we always kind of need to have this sort of a narrative being brought forward, whether it's the first time you're hearing it, whether it's you are a part of the fossil fuel industry and you still yet don't know the connection or the intersection of culture within the climate space, within how can the fossil fuel industry in general can support culture and actually further the effort. So my personal points really align very well with both of you, and I'm sure I would also love to hear, Julie, on your personal note, how would you think about this coming from Norway and seeing whatever you are seeing on a daily basis, and basically kind of the workings of your career as well. So something that would also bring something to the conversation.
Thank you, Gunjan, and thank you, all of you. I think this is a perfect segue to move on to how the culture sector in Norway and the rest of the Nordics and everywhere can engage with the kind of work you are doing. But I'd just like to share one example, that with Equinor, who is our state-owned oil company, they ran a YouTube series 2 years back, 5 episodes, called Den største testen, the greatest test. And that series has gathered 1.3 million views in 1 year, which is a lot for a country like Norway with 5.5 million inhabitants. In that same year, our 5 biggest environmental and climate organizations, the number of views they had on their YouTube videos were 10,000 combined, with all the videos for the 5 major climate organizations. And that's not to say something bad about our climate organizations, because they're doing all they can, but it's more telling about how much money the fossil fuel industry has to produce and promote and create content, which reaches very, very far. So over to the Nordic connection. If you are an artist, if you are a musician, or if you're working in an arts council, or if you are funding money to culture and sustainability work, what's the easiest way to get engaged with the kind of work and the platforms you are working on? Because for me, in the mountains of Norway, there's a far way from here to the Entertainment and Culture Pavilion in Dubai. But do you have any tips, or where should people go? Where should they channel their energy?
I think something that has worked really well for me, if because I haven't discussed this before as well. I come originally from a fashion background, and I worked, in fast fashion, and this is completely different from what I do now, and also something that I was never involved with. And for me to be, I think, a part of like the world's second biggest contributor, towards pollution, it just did not sit morally well with me. And that was something that I really wanted to change for myself. So a couple of the things that I did, and also, helped a lot of my friends and my network as well, is of just finding your people. And when I say find your people, it doesn't really mean just go out on the street and actually start talking to random people on the street about what do you do. But actually, we have such a great digital, means of connection now. We can actually look for opportunities online. We can look for forums. We can look for digital communities, groups to be involved in. Um, and there's just such a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of resources over so many social media platforms that we have now. LinkedIn is like a big one to be, have a presence and be involved with, and just connect with people who are in the same space. Follow the people who you would admire and would love to be kept with. So for me, I really just wanted to get in with that industry space and start volunteering with organizations and people who had their own startups and initiatives. And I think for 1 or maybe 2 years, I did not do a general corporate job, or I would say I did not get paid for any of the efforts that I did. And I just volunteered. I volunteered through my time, my energy, my skill set, whatever I had in design and fashion. And I just gained access to a lot of these different skill sets and resources that I could, get while working in the climate space and also in the creative space. So something that is worth.
Sorry, Gunjan. Sorry, I would just like to add that the people that are watching, if you are from different culture sectors in the Nordics and have suggestions to how people can get more involved or where they can turn their energy, feel very free to comment in the comment section and add to this conversation. Thank you. Sorry, Gunjan, please continue.
All good, all good. So yeah, I think that is something that worked really well for me. Even coming to Dubai, I think the first thing I did was basically hosted an event just to get to know people. And the first event that we did through Dubai Climate Collective was doing a climate anxiety session, around the people in your community and your neighborhood. And you never know who turns up and actually starts to talk to you about these things and the kind of community that you find through these things.
But
So,
I think that's what I wanted to add, that I think I've heard a lot of people, I think a lot of people will hear what you just said, Gunjan, and two things will come up to them. One is oh, there is no community. I've already seen it, so then you just mentioned, no, you didn't go to LinkedIn and do sure you did that, but you also did your own community building. So that is a two-way street. That's one thing that is important to clarify. And then the other one is that I don't think that, volunteering the way you describe it is very sustainable. I think it's more a matter of understanding too, in our day to day, who we are, no matter what profession we choose, we make choices as professionals that impact the world we live in. And we have to figure out which actions and what kind of work ethic we want to have in order to know who we want to work with, what project we want to work with, etc. And sometimes to get there, you have to sacrifice and you have to say, okay, I'm going to work with this group with this person, even if it's not for a monetary factor, which is definitely what both Gunjan, Kirsten, and I, and Pooja, and so many others involved in the pavilion did, because believe me, we did not do this for money. But I think it's just it can feel sometimes like you are going straight to the volunteering path, because we sometimes are going against the logic of what capitalism is telling us, no? Like, oh, grow, get bigger, more money. Well, not necessarily. I want to build a more sustainable, more resilient, more just future to live in, no? Regardless of what my income will be in that future. I also think to answer your question about how people can get involved in the Nordic countries, there's a lot of different groups. You yourself could tell us about your experience taking the culture climate training with Julich Bicycle, which is one of the most prominent organizations in the European region, but then also now, of course, with ECA, the goal is for more regional alliances and groups to get together so that they can establish their own pathways, and what is it that they need to do with your own film commissions, with your own department of culture, with your own regional stakeholders that play a role in creating incentive, in creating regulation. Because at the end of the day, we follow as an industry the regulation that we are told, and we benefit from the incentive that we are given. And that's an industry that is very much incentivized through a wide range of policies. And we need to now include sustainability in those policies. But also, what I want to mention about the Nordic connection is that it is important to, as constituents, make sure that we find ways to communicate with our representative. What is it the expectation that we as constituents and citizens of their country have when they show up and represent us in this type of conference international setting? And right now, Norway is not yet at the group of countries that is proactively leading the conversation on climate and culture in spaces like COP. So people in the Nordic countries have their power as constituents to go online and find an email to the Department of Culture, find a general phone number, and call them and be like, hey, who do I talk in the Ministry of Culture to make sure that someone goes to COP and that someone tells me what is the Ministry of Culture doing for climate action? What's the plan here? No? And I will give the example of the group of Friends of Culture-Based Action, which was launched last year at COP28. Norway is not yet one of the countries in the group of Friends, nor one of the countries that has signed the Emirates Declaration, which is a framework that basically outlines the pillars in which countries can designate and act as allies of culture in spaces like COP. So just wanted to put that out there, being mindful of time, that this is an important action item, that if you are passionate about this topic, we need more people in Norway to get Norway to participate in this setting, especially now in Baku and Belém coming up.
And I just want to add on a very practical level, because I know that we're short on time, but just I think it's the reason why we came together, the four of us, to do this, and our huge ecosystem of partners. Just creating a space, whether in person or virtual, is so important. And I think, Julie, that's what you're doing now with this webinar series. And I really thank you for having us here today, because we're, at the end of the day, not Norwegians. I mean, me, I pretend to be some days, but we don't know the local situation. And you guys do. You are all leaders in whatever industry you're in, having to do with the cultural industry. I mean, you have the answers, and creating a space where you can just exchange best practices. I mean, in my case, again, like my colleague and I with Saunter, we had a very particular way of doing things, and we're very much on the ground and working with community. And I'm able to then share those best practices and then get them back from the people that we've created in this larger community. And I'm very thankful for that. It's also has led to really amazing open doors, because it's sometimes hard to just go straight to calling the Ministry of Culture of your country, or I don't know, hosting some huge events, but just starting conversations, having a stamtisch, I don't know how to say that, like a coffee I don't know, coffee after work. I don't know what the word is, sorry. And just exchanging. And I think that's
playing, chatty, change makers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that this is a really good start. And I just wanted to also highlight, like with Bangkok, our upcoming pavilion, that started because our organizing partner, which is Creative Migration, and also it's two organizations, Creative Migration and Bangkok 1899. You'll see that in our master deck that I dropped the link for. That started because our friend Susanna Tantansap said, okay, I want to engage the cultural sector for climate in this amazing country that is full of culture that people don't know about, and also like climate vulnerable. So how do I get this going? She got funding, couple of tens of Ks, and now we have a week-long program of culture-based climate action, and it's really amazing. We have people coming in from the EU, and the three of us, and we're having a space to exchange. And at the end of it, Sam is spearheading the event, the mission of creating a toolkit. I don't know, Sam, if you want to mention that, but it's basically like all the cultural practitioners in Thailand who are coming, sharing best practices, putting into a practical toolkit, and then dispersing it all throughout the country. And I think, I don't know, that's a lot, but I wanted to keep it short, but I didn't. But I think just on a practical
Well, I think it's just what we were saying earlier, that this is not something that starts or ends inside of a cup, or even less in a blue zone. The blue zone is a very segregated, restrictive space, but also one that has very important stakeholders that need to be engaged. So it's finding that balance between how do we create an ecosystem where we can be present in those high-level spaces, but also build bridges with communities outside of them all over the world. And this year we will do that, not just in Bangkok, but also in Colombia, simultaneously during the COP16 Biodiversity Summit, and also in Baku for COP29. And we are collaborating with organizing partners as well in New York to do a pavilion pop-up in the Climate Week setting. So there is a lot of excitement opportunities, because we are approaching this from a view of collaboration and reciprocity, where we don't see the pavilion as being ours or being an organization itself, but rather a shared effort that we can spearhead collectively to make sure that efforts like the Emirate Declaration, like ECA, like group like Julie's Bicycle, and so many more probably in this call and beyond, have a place to showcase their work, build their infrastructure, find funding, re-grant additional funds, and learn from each other, because we are doing this on a trial and error basis, and we need a lot of places where we can share lessons and support each other mutually.
Thank you so much. We have only a few minutes left, and if anyone watching has some questions for Gunjan or Kirsten and Samuel, feel free to put it in the comment section, of course. And meanwhile, I have a question for you, because I see there's a lot of things happening in Norway, in the Nordics, in the EU, when it comes to creative industries and sustainability and culture and all, but oftentimes it seems like it's easier to get funding to put up a greener touring program than to put on a program about climate justice and inclusivity and those kind of issues. Do you have an advice to both funders, but also us who are trying to get funding to do these kind of things, to how to secure more money over on this kind of the culture and climate sector?
Sorry, Julie, just to confirm, you said it's easier to get funding for conferences about green touring versus what?
Green productions and all about the decarbonization of the field. I see that all the time in the EU as well, and it always seems like we have to sneak in a bit about climate justice and the global south and indigenous communities, and it kind of, it's harder to get.
Definitely, because we always have to approach everything we do from that intersectional lens, no? But I don't know, Gunjan and Kirsten, if you have any thought to that question.
I just have a quick one, which is, I think the beauty of this team is that we are all very open and very focused on climate and social justice. So we've empowered ourselves to be very, very forward with more of the justice side of what we're trying to do. And if we were in a larger organization, to be honest, it would be very difficult to do that. I mean, even posting a few things last year, we got some pushback from some funders, but luckily we were able to convince them to keep supporting us. So on our side, I don't know what the real answer is, but our methodology is just like saying it. It's what we believe. We've made it the values of our organization. We talk about it all the time. We promote things that are topics, projects, people who are working on social justice, environmental justice. We promote that with our channels. And I think that's just like stepping stones. I don't know, Sam or Gunjan, if you have other things to add, but it's just about sneaking it in whatever you can. But then also, I think having the confidence or maybe the opportunity to just like bravely state, like, this is who we are as an organization. This is what we believe in.
Yeah, I mean, that the authenticity is key. And also, I think that what we had to do last year ourselves is really find the people who were going to support us, who were going to root for us, and were going to believe in what the core of our mission is. And even those funders that you mentioned, maybe we needed to have some uncomfortable conversations about our stances on human rights issues. We still were able to approach those situations with authenticity and thrive, in my opinion, at the end, because then you meet in the middle. No? I think, to your point, Julie, fundraising for this space is incredibly difficult, not because we're not fundraising good enough, but because there is not enough money on this. Just a very small amount of money is right now being spent in intersectional climate justice and also culture-related work. So that is the most hard reality to keep in mind.
I think something to also keep in mind, like, since we're also like a very at a very nascent stage of our initiative, is even if we're applying to, let's say, 50 different funding opportunities, we might just be getting one or two of those. And that is to say, once we've gone through the entire process of talking to the funders or the organizations in general or any philanthropies, going through that entire process of filling like an extensive application, maybe, I think that's something that you really need to have heart and really have the patience to deal with that kind of a process, is if you really want to keep up with that and maintain that level of calm of just going through it all. I feel like you are going to get there till the end, but it's going to be a challenging journey, to say the least, because as Sam and Kirsten also mentioned, there's just not enough money for the culture or the creative sector in general, and not enough people to be able to support the cause and the mission itself. We were lucky to have, a really amazing, passionate team who supported us till the very end without, even knowing when we'll get paid. But this is the kind of conversation, the difficult conversation that we need to have with our funders, with our team, with our partners, that this needs to happen, and you are going to be the one supporting us for this.
That's very powerful words, Gunjan. Thank you very much, and thank you for your reflections. We'll make this whole conversation available on YouTube later on. I would like us to go in for landing, and very shortly, each of you, I'd like you to tell the biggest joy of working with culture-based climate action. What brings you joy? Very shortly in the end.
Mine is very quick. My expanded worldview. I thought it was already very, international, but this has been, more beyond than anything I could have ever imagined.
I would say something similar, the cultural wealth and the cultural richness. I think that, we often think that if we do climate action, we have to sacrifice, give up, and let go. But when you include culture in your climate action, you gain so much. You add so much perspective and so much understanding.
For me, I would say I'm not alone anymore in this, and I'm, very. It was very good for me that I found a community, and I'm happy that I'm not alone anymore in the mission and the cause itself. So that brings me joy.
Thank you so much, all three of you. That was some beautiful words to end it with. And thank you for you watching. And I'm looking forward to following you in the future. And I'm looking forward to also start a path with my colleague, Alan, who's there.
And hosting a pavilion in the mountains of Norway, hopefully. Yeah.
We could. You're definitely invited to create a pavilion in there.
Amazing. Well, you and everyone in this chat, we will make it happen.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your day and keep on doing a great job. And it's a pleasure following all your endeavors. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.